Okay, so this is our first lesson of our last unit on functions and relations. And so what we're going to talk about here today is just go back through the concept of function notation and how you can use those notations to give out different algebraic expressions. So the math on this isn't very hard, it's just knowing that this is what you should be doing. So for example, on the first one here, it says f of x equals 2x plus 5. Part A, find f of 3. So you should know by this point in math that this represents the x value. So you're just going to insert that number in for x and get out 11. And that 11 represents the y value. Or in other words, if you were to graph this equation, it would have the point on it 3, 11. Okay? Now, sometimes we don't always have to insert numbers in. Sometimes we can put letters in. So f of negative 6b, so again, this still represents the x value. So it's 2 times negative 6b plus 5. So that's negative 12b plus 5. And then the last one here, so we talked about this one in transformations. So this means 3 times f of x. And our f of x is 2x plus 5. So it's 3 times the entire function. So the answer is 6x plus 15. Okay? So it doesn't matter what equation I give you, the math stays the same. Okay? They do the same way. So f of 0 means plug 0 in for x. So 3 times 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 1, and we get out negative 1. Now here with the negative 4, just remember that when you're inserting a negative and there are exponents involved, you must have brackets around that negative 4. Okay, so those brackets have to be there. And then when you punch that into your calculator, you will get out the answer. Now, f of x plus 1, actually, hold on, I just need to grab my calculator here to calculate that one out. So we've got 3 times negative 4 squared, or in other words, 3 times 16, minus 2 times negative 4, minus 1, and you get out 55. So again, when the x value is negative 4, the y value is 55. Okay, again, we can also plug variables in. So again, this is going in everywhere where you see an x. So 3, so instead of x squared, we've got x plus 1 squared, minus 2 times x. So again, instead of x, we're going to write x plus 1, and then subtract 1 on the end. Okay, so you're going to FOIL this. So it's x squared plus 2x plus 1, multiply through by the negative 2, and then multiply through by the 3. So again, don't forget your basics of algebra when you're doing this stuff. So add and subtract like terms, and that is your final answer. Okay, let's do one more. What if our function is square root x? So again, plugging in 4. So now you have to be careful here. The square root of 4 is positive 2 and negative 2. Okay. 2 times f of x, this means 2 times root x, and that is as simplified as it gets. Negative 3 times f of 9x, this means negative 3 times by my function, but instead of writing in x, I'm going to write in 9x. Now, because these two terms here are multiplied, think of it as 9 times x, what I'm able to do is separate out my square root sign. So the square root of 9 is 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Whoops, and then root x. And that's the simplified form. So we've done work with function notation throughout the course, but again, this just serves as a little reminder of that. Okay, so now let's go backwards. So what this is I am giving you, let's say, this, and you have to go backwards and write it in function notation. Okay, but we'll do it on a much simpler scale. So we can see that our original function is root x, or sorry, absolute value of x. And so I've got 5 times absolute value of x. So that just means 5 times f of x, because this is my function. root x plus, so absolute value of x plus 2. So again, this is my function. So I'm just going to write it as f of x plus 2. But make sure that plus 2 is outside of the brackets. This question and this question are totally different questions. This one means that. Okay, so you've got to really pay attention as to whether that 2 is inside the function or outside the function. So here, the 3 is outside the absolute value sign, and all of this is inside the absolute value sign. So remember, my f of x is absolute value x. So it's going to be 3 times f, and then all of this has to go inside the function, like that. Okay? So for number 5, x cubed is my original. So here, this is inside because everything is being affected by the cubed. So I need to put everything inside the function. So it's f of 2x. Because remember, the f is representing the cubic function. So here, both of these are outside the function because they're not being affected by that cubed. So we're just going to go 3 times f of x, finish off the bracket, subtract 8. On this one, both of these are being affected by the cubed. So all of that has to go inside the function. So inside the function, I'm going to write that. Now you can leave it like that. Sometimes on the diploma, they will multiply it through, but they're both equally correct answers. Okay, so a little bit of review there with that. Okay, so let's take a look at this worksheet. So it says function notation versus relation notation. So if the original function is y equals x squared. So again, think of this as f of x equals x squared. And we're going to transform it into this. So again, notice the minus 3 is inside the function because it's being affected by the squared. So how do we write that in function notation? F of x minus 3. And again, we don't write the squared in because the f is representing the squared. The f is representing the squared. So on this one, x squared plus 5. So this is outside because it's not being affected by the squared. So you'd write f of x plus 5. Now be careful on this one. The 6 is on the outside. It is not being affected by the squared. Compares this one, the 3 is being affected by the squared, so it is on the inside. So this one would be 6 times f of x. This one would be f of 3x. Okay. Then going backwards. So again, here I'm giving you the function notation, and I want to have what is the actual equation out. So this is on the outside. This is on the inside. And remember, my f is the squared function. So I'm going to go 2, and then inside the squared function is the x plus 1. So on this one, 3x is inside, plus 2 is outside. So we're going to have 3x squared, and then the plus 2 on the end. Okay, so let's do the same thing again now, but this time we'll do it with the square root. So again, this is my original f of x. So this is all inside the square root sign. So when I write it in function notation, I have to write the x minus 3 inside the function. Whereas on this one, the plus 5 is outside the function. So then I write plus 5 on the outside of the function. Here again, this 6 is on the outside, whereas this 3 is on the inside. So it's going to be 6 times f of x, or just 6 f of x. Whereas this one is going to be f of 3x. Okay, so going backwards. So again, remember, this represents the square root function. So this means 3 times by square root x plus 2. Notice they're both on the outside of the function. Whereas this, the whole thing is inside. So it's going to be y equals 1 over 2x on the inside of the function. Okay, so that's just a little review on function notation. I'd like you to practice some on your own. We're going to go all the way back to the very beginning of the booklet. So it's page 7, numbers 9 to 14. And again, make sure that you check online for those answers. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know.